So this pandemic and the thousands of people who took part in trials to make sure the COVID jab is safe for us has really emphasised the importance of trials. Well, today is World Clinical Trials Day, and there are studies going on here in Liverpool every day across a host of existing conditions and illnesses, including depression and dementia. MAC Clinical Research are the company behind many trials across the Northwest. Dr Paul Westhead is their medical director. Morning, Paul.
Morning, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. So what trials are happening at the moment then, Paul?
Oh, great. Thanks, Paul. Well, I'm based over in Prescott in our Merseyside clinic, recruiting for several trials at the moment. We've got dermatology or skin conditions for psoriasis, which is when you get thickening of the skin and plaques that develop. Atopic dermatitis or eczema conditions, another condition that can affect the skin. I mean, you've mentioned Alzheimer's. That's something we've got a long history of running trials in. We're also running trials in erectile dysfunction and also looking at new treatments for anxiety and depression, which has obviously been quite pertinent given the difficulties of the last year. I mean, these are common conditions, but we also cover less common conditions but are equally debilitating, such as diabetic neuropathy, which is when you get nerve problems due to diabetes, particularly in the feet. And we're also running some studies into conditions such as inflammatory bowel disease, which is conditions like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, and particularly a rare condition, which any of your listeners have got, please get in touch, associated with this, called chronic pouchitis, which just gives us an opportunity to try to find these new treatments for rarer diseases, particularly the chronic pouchitis. And then upcoming, we've got some really interesting studies. I don't know if any of your listeners managed to watch yourself managed to watch the BBC Two programme last night, the psychedelic drug trial. We're running some psychedelic drug studies, firstly in healthy volunteers, but also then looking at it as a potential treatment for depression and opioid use as well, which is a really promising area, really. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and we've known that clinical trials have obviously gone on for a long time, but I think the last year, with all that's been happening with COVID, has really underlined their importance, hasn't it?
Oh, it really has. I mean, if you look how quickly the vaccine developed, to go from a new virus to getting a full vaccine developed in a short space of time, it really is down to, it's fascinating what happens when we have the right resources and humanity focuses its brains on one particular area, but it was due to the amount of patients and volunteers who came in to get tested, to go into the trial, that we're able to develop things so quickly. We do focus on a variety of different conditions and particularly pre-existing conditions. But, once thousands of volunteers put themselves forward to help out on those COVID vaccine trials, it's a really good time to use that momentum to try and get other people into trials to help with other conditions.
So tell us about the process then, Paul. Someone sees something that impacts them or a loved one. How do they get involved?
Well, with MAC directly, we've got a website called researchforyou.co.uk, and you can look what trials we're currently running. So what would happen normally is you would get in touch via that, and we would get in touch via the phone and start discussing through some eligibility questions. I mean, one thing I want to say is MAC don't own the drugs that we are testing. Our focus really is on patient safety and producing good quality scientific results at the end. So we don't have that conflict of interest. But the first step of that to maintain safety is to make sure that the patients going into the studies are suitable for it. So we do that, first of all, with a tele-chat, just to see if you're suitable. And then we do a pre-screen, which is when you come into the site, usually, depending on COVID, to speak to someone that's going into a lot of detail about the trial and the requirements of the trial. We'll give you some information to take away about it before returning. We speak to your GP, and we speak to your GP as well. And then you come back and go through the consent form. We do a full, what we call, screening process, give you a chance to ask any questions about any of the trial, but also do a full health check. We do blood tests, physical exam, ECGs, sometimes CTs, MRI scans. And then if you're suitable and all the safety checks are complete, and more important, you still wish to go ahead, you can go into a trial from there. And then what happens on the trial depends specifically on the trial. It could be a few days, it could be a number of years. It just depends on the actual trial.
Yeah, there is maybe this is a popular misconception, but the idea that it's for students, all these trials, and you get a few quid. Is that wrong?
Well, I think I put far more people into studies who are working or retirees and students, definitely. I mean, in Liverpool, most of our trials are for patients who've got an actual disease that needs treating. And all studies have specific criteria in order to be eligible to take part. And some get financial compensation for this, and others it may just be travel expenses. It depends on the disease and the drugs. So many people aren't happy with the therapies they use. It's a chance to get these new treatments. But we also run the Healthy Volunteer Programme, so those who don't have any medical conditions, and that's for members of the public to support us in our research, for certain trials. And these do tend to be financially compensated. But no, I think the octogenarian we enrolled yesterday might be a bit take issue with being saying it's just students who get involved in trials.
Could, of course, still be a student, but
that's very true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
and the impact they have, you can't underplay it, can you? With cancer trials, of course, it's a matter of life and death.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the thing is, we don't, with every little bit of information we get about any drug, even if it doesn't work, it just gives us that bit more information about a disease to eventually lead to a cure or to make, somebody's quality of life much better. It's just those little incremental steps. It's really important. And again, I want to thank everyone who's been involved with any trials at all. And please, if you've got any interest at all, get in touch.
Well, it's been fascinating speaking to you. Keep up the good work, and thank you for joining me today, Paul.